I want to introduce to you a good friend, Elvis Grbac. He's a local Croatian-American, an old friend, and his family, especially his parents, Ivan and Celia Grbac, who have been singing in the St. Paul's Croatian Church Choir for a long time, I'm sure. So one of really the staples of our Croatian community. And Elvis went to St. Joseph High School in Cleveland, and I think there's some alums here of Villa Angela or St. Joe's. Okay, there's one there. And then he went to the University of Michigan and went on to play professional football as a quarterback. And since retiring, he's been back in Cleveland, motivational speaker, businessman, and he recently returned to his alma mater, Villa Angela St. Joseph High School, as the athletic director, head football coach, and the director of the Marianist Urban Students Program. Please join me in welcoming our very own Elvis Grbac.
Good morning. Is it still morning? First of all, thank you to ACAP for inviting me. Can everybody hear me? I know I'm a little bit tall with this microphone. So, and to Maria, thank you for your patience and your persistence. She's the one that really tracked me down and made sure that I was here this morning. My perspective, as you look at your agenda, which is really jam-packed this morning, is really a reflection of this community of Croatian-Americans living here in the Cleveland area and really abroad. You have to understand, as a professional athlete going abroad, everywhere I go, the Croatian community comes up to me and they share their story with me. So I've been everywhere, from San Francisco, Chicago, Kansas City, New York, you name it, here in the Cleveland area for many, many years, and I've heard many great stories about their family history, about what makes it them unique as being Croatian Americans. So in perspective and reflection, what I'd like to do is kind of give you my perspective on it. I've never really had the chance to give this opportunity to tell my story of what it means for me to be Croatian American in the community and being in the public eye for so long. And people looking up to, professional athletes and especially the youth. My perspective will not be on myself. It will be on my family. As a lot of people here in the Cleveland area know my parents very, very well. They came to this country in 1968, so I'm first generation. They have been singing in that choir since 1968, okay? Thank you. I have an older brother, older sister, younger sister. Very, very strong faith, family, community. We're very, very close. But let me start with my father. I had an opportunity, I would say about 8 to 10 years ago. My kids were right about grade school, right before high school, which I thought, and my wife really thought, had a great opportunity for them to take them back, to understand where their grandparents came from, to really understand what it took to leave that country and to build what they've built. So I went back there and obviously flew into Rome, obviously, and then spent some time there, but I made my way to a very, very small town, Linišća, in Istria, okay, very close to Buzet. Had an opportunity to spend a good solid 2 weeks there with my parents that showed up. And the first thing out of my father's mouth is, "Welcome to Croatia, the land that I love." I will never forget that, to have that opportunity for my father to give that perspective of where he grew up, how he was formed as a strong Croatian man, and then be able to give that perspective to his grandchildren. I want to share a story with you. He had an opportunity as a young man in that small village. I think periodically during the year, he was actually, as he described it, a cowboy. There was, in Linišća, if you know Linišća, where Linišća is, it's really settled in a very small mountain range. And on the other side of this mountain range, there used to be a lake there 60 years ago. And my father had to take the cows to that lake for a period of time on his own. And we had an opportunity as a family to walk with my father, and we got to this lake, which is now trees and shrubs. And he had that opportunity to tell his grandchildren the cowboy that he is or was. And it kind of dawned on me a little bit about being Croatian and being Croatian-American. And hopefully that maybe my message is this, is that here's a man, not well educated, probably in the standards of the United States, probably somewhere maybe in mid-high school, had a vision and had the confidence to fall in love with the woman that he's still married to, had the vision of creating a family, and coming to a country that he had no idea about, with no money and no education. And then by the time that they reached the United States, he had 2 children. It's an amazing perspective as us sitting here today as Croatian-Americans. Many of us in this room probably have very, very similar stories. The younger generation that's sitting here, like myself, first generation or second generation or third generation, it is up to us as a group like this, ASAP, to continue that vision, that courage to go beyond what you're capable of doing. My father had a perspective of himself beyond himself, an unbelievable faith in himself, confidence in himself. I look in this room right now and I see in every face that same confidence, that same courage. I don't know where that comes from, but I think as somewhere deep rooted within us as Croatians, that's who we are. And that's the perspective that we can bring as Croatian-Americans to this country and abroad. Now, I also give you a little bit of perspective also. So my oldest son, Jack, I have 3 children. My oldest son, Jack, I don't know if there's the medical community at large here. My oldest son, Jack, was born with spina bifida occulta. If you know anything about spina bifida, the child is born, and when that child is born, there's an actual hole at the base of the spine, and all the spinal fluid is drained through birth. But thank God my son had I would say like a fat tissue on the base of his spine. The #1 pediatric neurosurgeon in the world is in San Francisco. My son was born in San Francisco and had that opportunity to receive that surgery, which was about 6 hours. And if you saw my son Jack walk in here right now, you wouldn't think anything different. You would think he was just a normal kid, very successful, lives in Chicago, is part of a band, works, very, very, very successful at what he does. My point is this: between his freshman and sophomore year, he was bold enough, to apply for an internship at Capitol Records in Los Angeles from the University of Dayton. Other applicants were from Yale, Harvard, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, and they were all juniors or seniors. He succeeded and was able to go to California on his own, And mind you, my son still struggles to this day, every day, with his health issues. There's not a day that goes by that he has to make sure that he plans his day around the way his body feels during the day. So here we are as parents dropping him off in Los Angeles. If you know where Capitol Records is, it is on the Sunset Strip, and it's not a very safe place to drop off your 19-year-old son who has health issues. He had an apartment, walked to work every day, did an amazing job, still has unbelievable contacts with Capitol Records. He is in the music industry. You know what he said? The perspective that he got from his grandfather when he had an opportunity to go back to Croatia and understand the sacrifice that his grandfather did for him. Even in his suffering day to day, that he can draw from that courage, that confidence he had in his grandfather, to do something special, to go beyond himself, even in his suffering that he suffers pretty periodically, daily. That he has an opportunity as a Croatian-American to have a vision and have the courage to fulfill his dreams. Everybody in this room knows exactly what I'm speaking of. We have that family history. We have people in our lives that have shaped and formed us in that thought process. Whatever it may be the confidence, the courage to go beyond who you are, no matter what situation it is, and to understand where you come from, and to have the pride to go beyond yourself and to be successful at whatever you do. You demand it. I know how you are because I'm the same way. I demand it. You know, Maria came up here and told you that I am back at my alma mater here in the Cleveland area. I run 3 programs. I'm not only the head football coach over at Villa Angela St. Joseph High School, I'm the athletic director, and through the Marianas Brothers, our religious group there, I run an urban student program there. Who else but a Croatian-American can do that? Give me the task. Thank you. I think I go beyond myself, like my father, like my son, to tackle any kind of task. Now, on the other part of that is this. We have a tradition, whatever tradition, family traditions you have, but in the Croatian-American, the Croatian tradition, there is a significant tradition that we need to uphold. We have a generation in this room that I can look around that they've established that tradition. This older generation that sits in front of me, like my parents, like some of those that were probably there last night, they've established that tradition. It is up to us 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, to continue that tradition, to teach our children what it means to be Croatian-American. Without that, it does not last as being Croatian-American. What it'll last it'll be American. That's not right. We have an unbelievable tradition that we need to uphold. I will say this, I'll give you one example. My cousin, William Busden, suffered a massive heart attack at the age of 40, about 2 years ago. And it kind of struck me that a young man like him could go so quickly with a matter of hours. And I truly believe that there's always good in bad events. We had his funeral, and many of my cousins that came in from the Toronto area came down. And typically, if you have the same relatives as I do, sometimes you don't see them until weddings or funerals. I was disappointed that here I was sitting, seeing my relatives at a funeral, and I have not spoken to them in quite some time. I've taken it upon myself, okay, to create a family reunion that I started at my house that had over 500 people show up at my house, and to continue the tradition that my father was able to establish here in the States. My father is, I believe, 81, and he'd never tell me his real age for some reason. But however, I know he's not going to be around for very long. It will be up to myself and our siblings, okay, to continue that tradition. hopefully I can do that. It's important to me that my kids understand exactly what it means to be Croatian American in this community. Now, as a former quarterback that played at the highest level, I challenge you, everybody in this room, there's an agenda that you will follow today and tomorrow. Do you have the courage? Do you have the vision to go beyond yourself, to continue what has been brought up here, what will be brought up in the next day or so, to look beyond yourself, to understand and take the courage and vision to continue the tradition that has already been established? That's the challenge we're faced with. In closing, I will say this. It's deeply rooted within you. You can't explain it. You go around the country, people look at your name, and they ask you questions. Who are you? What do you say to them? Do you have the pride, the courage, the vision? Do you keep the tradition alive? We're at a very, very important stage, I think, especially here in the Cleveland area. I look at that graph from 18 to 19, and I see an unbelievable increase, not only in the Cleveland area, but also other places in the country. What a great opportunity we have to have the vision, the courage that our forefathers have done for us. It is up to us now to keep that tradition. Thank you.